You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FIRE. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FIRE instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello there and welcome back. So today, we'll be continuing the mini-series on alternative retirement options. On the last episode, we talked about mini retirements, also known as sabbaticals. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to that one, please feel free to check it out. Now on this episode today, we'll be talking about another retirement alternative, which is early semi-retirement. Yep, early semi-retirement. So just to give you some context, let me first outline what traditional semi-retirement is. So traditional semi-retirement is a step between working full-time and full retirement. Usually this means reducing your working hours some years before your state pension age, or continuing to work past your state pension age but at a reduced capacity. Think of it as retirement training or retirement experience. So in a nutshell, it's reduced working hours just before or after your pension age. Okay, so early semi-retirement is similar to that, i.e. reducing your working hours, except you'll be doing it much earlier in life. Let's say in your 30s, your 40s and your 50s, just as a rough guide, assuming you've saved enough though to trigger it. Okay, so this is another strategy to have more freedom in your life before reaching FI. It's all about working less and living more. The focus shifts to enjoying your life and what you have now and less on the accumulation of money part. So just with traditional semi-retirement, you can still look at it as a step away from full FI. Typically, this means reduced working hours in the form of, let's say, part-time work to cover your living expenses, because you've already built a sizable nest egg to do so. The awesome thing about semi-retirement is that it widens your options in how you can earn. So for example, instead of working for a company, you can be self-employed, maybe start a business, do freelancing, or even some consulting work. Or if you still want to work for a company, you can choose a more simple, less stressful job that has fewer hours. Or even choose something like seasonal work, or combine lots of small gigs. You can really get creative with how you earn in semi-retirement, mainly because you don't need to earn as much as you did during your accumulation phase. Okay, so you might be thinking, what would I do with all of that free time I've created outside of my reduced hours? Well, you can spend your free time doing the things you've always loved to do but couldn't because of full-time work. For example, starting a passion project or a side hustle, or even spending more time on an existing passion project or side hustle. Maybe spend more time on hobbies or passions like exercise, resting, reading, family time, volunteering, or even just playing video games. If you're stuck with what to do, my suggestion here is think of what you loved to do as a kid, but work and adulting got in the way. Like for me, in the last few years, I've gotten back into playing football and basketball, and it just feels really good getting back into it. Another way to think of it is, what new hobbies or skills would you love to learn? And just experiment from there. For me, since I'm vegetarian, I've started experimenting with growing vegetables in the balcony. It actually comes with a lot of trial and error, but I'm kind of enjoying it overall so far. Okay, so how do we achieve early semi-retirement? As mentioned in previous episodes, if you still want to continue your journey to FI, the Coast FI strategy can be an option to facilitate this, and also Barista FIRE. I've covered both of these options in episode 3 if you wanted to have a listen. So one of the biggest differentiators from the two strategies is how they affect your FIRE nest egg. If you don't want to touch your FIRE nest egg, then Coast FI is an option. On the other hand, if you feel your nest egg is at a point where you can start withdrawing some of it, say 1 to 2%, then Barista FIRE would be an option. But for today, let's outline Coast FI since we're massive fans of this strategy. So in basic terms, Coast FI is getting your investment portfolio to a specific number, where you can stop saving and investing. With the help of compound interest, your portfolio should continue increasing in the background until it hits either your traditional retirement age or a specific target retirement date. Once you hit your FI number, saving and investing becomes optional. You just need to cover your living expenses. You can then choose to semi-retire at that point, as you don't need to earn as much. Okay, let's look at a quick example. Let's say you were saving 50% of your salary every month on your path to FIRE. Once you hit your FI number, saving becomes optional. That means you can live on 50% of your current salary. You just need to earn half of what you were previously making, or even less if you can find ways to cut expenses. So that can mean working part-time, say 2.5 to 3 days a week, or find a lower paying job that you enjoy more, or even one of the alternative work options we mentioned earlier. There are a number of FI calculators online. The Fioneers, Wallet Burst, and Money Flamingo have some awesome ones. You can just play around with your own figures on there and identify your own FI timeline. Okay, so the more I think about early semi-retirement, the more I think how awesome it is as an alternative to full FI. Anyway, let's have a look at some pros and cons to consider. Okay, so the first pro, and as mentioned earlier, you can still work towards FIRE in the background. Although the drawback is that it'll probably take a little bit longer to get to your target, but at least you're still on track for it. Another pro is that reducing your working hours may also mean reducing work-related costs, like travel, work food, work clothes, work socials, and things like that. It may even reduce your tax. Okay, I'm no tax specialist, but I'm pretty sure your reduced salary may bring about a lower tax bracket. Okay, another pro is that you can use that money that you saved up on yourself to buy your time back, which of course is one of our most valuable resources. This creates more options to design a life you love. As mentioned earlier, you can experiment with lots of different ways to earn money, and you wouldn't need to earn near as much as when you were working full-time. Another pro is you can quit full-time work quicker than waiting for full FI. Plus, the financial target is easier to achieve. Now, this is important, especially if you have any work-related physical or mental health issues that need to be sorted as soon as possible. Okay, so the last pro, and my favourite one, is you might find semi-retirement so enjoyable you wouldn't want to retire at all. See, if you think about it, people desire retirement because they don't want to work anymore, but it's usually because they dislike their job. Now, what if through the semi-retirement years you end up finding a nice balance between doing work you love and your personal time? You see, if someone retired early, I'm pretty sure they'll still be doing some type of work anyway, so semi-retirement might already feel like early retirement. Alright, so let's go over to the cons. The first con is that you stop investing during that period, especially with FI. Your FIRE plan might take a little bit longer to get to. So just like mini retirements, there's a trade-off you need to consider. Okay, so the second con is you'll still need to be actively working in some way to cover your living costs. Yep, work is still not optional at this stage, unfortunately, but if you find work you enjoy, it might not be as much of a problem. Okay, so the last con is that it might not be easy to find part-time roles in your field or your profession. That's if you want to stay in your profession, that is. It's just something to consider. You may need to switch to a different industry or a different role. Okay, so again, I'm mentioning these cons so you're not going into it blindly. And again, there's always ways to tackle and manage the cons, so it's absolutely doable if it's something you want to consider. So just as a quick example, you can always go back to full-time work if you really need to. The way I think of it is, if you're on the FI path, you've obviously got your head screwed on and have built a pretty good resume. You can find another job in the same industry or profession, or perhaps even use your transferable skills to change careers if you can't go back to your old job. Anyway, just some more food for thought. Alright, so that brings us to our key takeaways. So the first one, in the intro, we discussed about what early semi-retirement is. So if we looked at the semi-retirement part, it's basically a step between full-time work and full-time retirement. It's reducing your working hours to free up time to focus on what lights you up. This typically means finding part-time work. The focus turns to lifestyle design and not on aggressive money accumulation. Now, if we looked at the early part in early semi-retirement, instead of the traditional semi-retirement being near your pension age, either just before or after, you're doing it much earlier in life, e.g. your 30s, 40s, your 50s. Now on the second part, we talked about how to get to early semi-retirement. So there are two possible options using FI principles, Coaster FI and Barista FIRE. So one way is not touching your nest egg, and another is drawing down a portion of it to help fund living costs. Either way, both allow you to work less hours since you're not heavily investing at this stage. Alright, and on the third part, we talked about the pros and cons to consider. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforefire.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforefire@proton.me. That's freedombeforefire@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. Alright, so that wraps up the second part of this mini-series. If you do have any questions, feel free to just send me an email. On the third and last part, we'll be discussing another alternative retirement option. And always remember, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.